I'm so lonely. All the other Viltrumites are scared of me.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Invincible Season 3, Episode 8 finale video. There was so much stuff going on. The big Conquest fight was just a small part of it. There's so much stuff down the road that they were setting up. His biggest fight so far, bigger than his fight with his father, and if you thought that this was a big deal, there's so many worse things coming for him and for Earth in their future. So many more arcs that they have to adapt from the comics. One of the other most notable things about this episode is that it is the rematch of the century from The Walking Dead. We finally got Glenn's revenge after all these years, so I broke out my friend that The Walking Dead people sent me. They sent me a Lucille bat during the final season of that show. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. Robert Kirkman will also start talking more about Season 4 real soon, and I will do more videos when we get more details. But the episode title was, I Thought You'd Never Shut Up, which is actually interesting because it's a reference to something that Invincible actually said to Dinosaurus during their fight in the comics. Completely different character that he winds up fighting, separate event beyond the Conquest fight. Don't know why they used that for the title of the Conquest episode, their big fight, if Dinosaurus was nowhere to be found in the episode. Maybe we'll learn why they did this when we get Season 4, Episode 1. Like, I'm expecting that post-credit scene with Damien Darkblood to maybe tease something with Dinosaurus related. Because as far as I can remember, that Damien Darkblood scene with him in Hell talking to his lord about restoring his infernal throne in the Hell dimension was not something from the original comics. Also, the next big cameo scene in the episode, some of you might have detected the voice here. The King of Hell here, this other demon that Damien Darkblood is helping, is voiced by Bruce Campbell, which feels like a huge Evil Dead Army of Darkness reference. Maybe Robert Kirkman, just a big fan of those movies. As he should be. Hopefully they do something bigger with that storyline in Season 4 and beyond, just because why would you bring Bruce Campbell for a big cameo like this if it wasn't going to turn into something bigger? Generally though, all the Invincible episodes are either named specifically for comic book titles or lines of dialogue that people had in the comics. But even in the opening scenes of this episode, when they start to unleash on each other, you can tell where all the money for the animation went. Like, all their budget for the animation went to these last two episodes, particularly to this very last episode. So for those of you that were complaining that the animation was subpar in earlier episodes, the evil has finally been defeated. This is where all the good animation went. Generally, their fight seems like it's meant to evoke mostly Superman versus Doomsday vibes. If you read The Death of Superman or you watched that in the animated movies, they've done a couple different versions of The Death of Superman. They even kind of got there in live action during the Zack Snyder era when he fought Doomsday in those movies. There's some people that were claiming that the original comic book fight here was inspired a little bit by Goku and the Z-Fighters against Broly during Dragon Ball in the 90s. I don't know if that's true. I've never heard Robert Kirkman talk about Dragon Ball, but that might be true. Generally, the Invincible comics take inspiration from both Marvel, DC comics, and a lot of other things just beyond general comics like that. One of the other big changes, the episode starts with the title instead of having a cold open, and it's the same cycling colors of the title to denote the different versions of Mark from the Invincible War, which do show up later in the episode. We'll talk about them, the Rihanna marks. This time they end on the white and gray one to represent the colors of the Viltrumite military uniform that Conquest is wearing and one of the other marks was wearing, who we can call Mustache Mark. But in the original comics, all the different marks are given funny variant names. But they come rushing out of the title at each other as if no time ended after the end of last week's episode, like it's meant to be one continuous fly at each other as their fight begins.
Anissa would be telling you how the Viltrum Empire would turn this wretched planet into a utopia.
You notice Mark is so pissed that the shockwave from their first impact destroys a ton of buildings in the area, and they also use this impact phenomenon later in the episode to show you when the fight really starts to get intense, when Mark really starts to unleash on him. So RIP, more collateral damage in this city. It's already been wasted, like it was destroyed before this. Now it's really destroyed because Conquest, during a lot of this part of the episode, uses Mark like a tool to just bludgeon the rest of the city itself. Like, I'm going to damage all these buildings and I'm just going to use you as my Negan bat. Make more Walking Dead Negan Lucille references, like he literally turns Mark's body into another version of Lucille, just damaging stuff all over the place because he enjoys it. Also meant to be a comp to his fight against Omni-Man in Season 1, when Omni-Man basically used his body like a cudgel and forced him to watch as his body was used to kill a whole bunch of people. This time, though, it's meant to be so much worse. There are a couple of characters in the episode that remark on that. This fight being so much more hardcore than his fight with Omni-Man, in referring to Conquest as being more powerful than Omni-Man. I don't know about him being more powerful than Omni-Man, but he's definitely more unhinged than Omni-Man. Like, he even talks about that later. There was a moment later in the episode that was not from the original comics, and most of the episode is meant to be ripped directly from the comics. Like, all the dialogue, the really, really big moments in the episode, mostly taken from that original fight. We'll get to those in a second. I'll point out the moments that were not in the original comic as we get to those, because there are a couple really, really important ones. The one I'm talking about specifically was when Conquest admitted the dark truth of his reality to Invincible before he was about to kill him. Like, confess your sins, confess your dark truth to someone, because they'll be dead soon. They won't be able to tell anyone else about it anyway. There are a couple other key parts of the episode that were not from the original comics, just stuff that they added, so I'll point those out as we get to those parts of the episode. Conquest getting real with him during their fight, that was just one of the better ones. But early on in their fight here, the big thing is that Mark is still holding back. He still fundamentally believes that superheroes shouldn't kill people, so he's not just completely unloading on Conquest when he first comes. He's not really using 100% of his power, his abilities, which Conquest knows, and then spends the whole fight taunting him, trying to get Mark to unleash the beast on him, just because he's so sadistic like that. He's so lonely, and he loves the carnage. He brings up Anissa, also reminding you that she will eventually come back. Eventually, probably not till season 4, maybe even season 5. We'll see when they do that. That'll wind up being one of the next most controversial moments that people will be talking about. But one of the other details here is that they use a lot of their fight for exposition, so Conquest is letting you know what he knows about what's happened recently just in the history of the show. Conquest was told by Kregg that he gave Invincible his father Omni-Man's mission when they arrested him and threw him in that prison. It's your job now, or else conquer this planet, prepare it for the Viltrumite Empire, or we'll do it for you, and it'll be really, really bad. Anissa was meant to be the carrot in that equation, like she was being nice with him. If that's what you can call nice for Viltrumites, she will be less nice the next time she shows up. Conquest, though, was meant to be the stick. He does not play games. As he says, he doesn't care about Earth. He just wants Mark to resist because he relishes the chance for a real fight, and he hasn't had one in a long, long time. So he just wants to thrash Mark all over the planet, basically play with his food before he winds up eating a bunch of people. Like, he literally tells Oliver, I'm gonna eat you after this. That was not an empty threat. He really would have done that if he hadn't been stopped. You notice that he has that mechanical arm. It is meant to be a bit of a comp for the Infinity Gauntlet in Thanos. It doesn't have Infinity Gauntlet powers, though, like it's just a regular prosthetic arm created by the Viltrumite scientists. The reason why he has a prosthetic arm, though, if Viltrumites are meant to be so powerful, is because his arm was bitten off by another really powerful alien race of creatures while he'd been weakened by the Scourge virus temporarily.
I am having the time of my life here.
Normally, Viltrumite bodies have a really powerful healing factor. That's why Mark can keep getting pounded to mush so often and bounce back so quickly. Later in the episode, that's also why Cecil says he's waiting for Conquest to become conscious again, because Conquest's healing factor has started to kick in that post-credit scene. But a long time ago, there was a brief period where he'd been weakened by the Scourge virus, and it basically turned off his healing factor, and his strength level had been vastly diminished, just temporarily. But while that was happening, he was on another planet. A big alien bit part of his arm off. During this fight in present day against Mark, he's back at 100% of his normal power level. One of the other notable things about his character, too, is that he's sent from planet to planet to conquer them, and he's never failed to assimilate a world that he's been sent to. Also because the other Viltrumites, he says, are terrified of him, so they keep him away by just sending him to other planets rather than letting him come home to their home planet. For those of you thinking more about the whole Walking Dead of this, with the Glenn versus Negan rematch going on in the background, Robert Kirkman said that was the whole reason why he cast Jeffrey Dean Morgan to play Conquest, because it was too good of an opportunity for that rematch. There were a couple light references to that Walking Dead history in the episode, but they were a little subtle about it. When Oliver sees the fight on TV, tries to rush off to help, that's also right out of the comics. Debbie was a little more hesitant in that version, but it's the same basic outcome. She ultimately lets him go help. But one of his grand weaknesses is that he still has the mind of a child, and his power level is way, way less than Mark's, and Mark's power is way, way less than Conquest's. So really, there's nothing that Oliver can do other than distract Conquest. Like, that's the only value he has in this actual fight here. When Mark tries to stop Conquest mid-fight and talk no jutsu him, that's also right out of the comics. Conquest gets super pissed off that he's trying to actually talk it out with him like bros, like, how dare you try to talk me out of this? And even though most of the dialogue that they have in the episode is taken directly from the comic book dialogue, like you can picture Jeffrey Dean Morgan there just reading out of the original comic book at the booth there. A lot of his performance is giving Negan vibes. If you never watched those original Walking Dead episodes, Negan was a little bit like this, like a little sly, very sadistic sounding, but he would get very soft with people when he spoke with them like this in this very terrifying way before he just absolutely unleashed on them. Part of me feels like Robert Kirkman was talking to him about doing this role and explaining him in a very Negan kind of way, like this is what their fight kind of goes down, like a lot like Negan's fights in the comics. Generally just seems like he enjoys the carnage the way that Negan enjoyed carnage on Walking Dead. Back at the GDA, we see Cecil's reaction to Conquest. When he comes to D.A. Sinclair, right out of the comics, he's in the middle of turning the marks that they killed during the Invincible War into upgraded God-tier Reanimen, which we can call Reanimarks, like the Reanimarks will be ready by Season 4. That's a really big thing in the comics, too. The whole idea is that D.A. Sinclair says that their bodies are literally so strong that they don't have the right tools to even cut into them to turn them into Reanimarks. Like, it's very, very slow going. But eventually he will finish them. There are a couple of jokes. They use a little bit of comedy during his scenes, too. That's kind of what they used him for previously on the show, like dark, dark comedy. Eve becomes conscious again and learning what's happened rushes off to help Mark with Conquest. The reason why her parents are surprised is because she hadn't told them that Mark was invincible yet. So earlier when they met Mark, they had no idea that he had powers. They just thought he was some regular dude. Conquest reveals to Mark that he met his father Omni-Man when Omni-Man was much younger, and when he says that he was executed before he left their home planet Viltrum, that's not true because we literally just saw Omni-Man escape and kill those Viltrumites. I think the idea here is that Conquest didn't know that, but like Omni-Man said, their leader Thragg would eventually learn of his escape, learn what happened. The reason why they wouldn't spread word of that is to prevent anyone from learning their ultimate secret, that there were only 50 pure-blooded Viltrumites left in the universe.
This is the Empire's most closely guarded secret.
Technically a few less than that now because they literally just killed a couple of them in this escape. The idea, though, is that not every Viltrumite always knows every single thing that goes on around the universe or gets told everything at the exact same time, the same way that all militaries everywhere are compartmentalized. Oliver then rushes in trying to help. Like I said, big problem, not as powerful as Mark, and Mark isn't as powerful as Conquest, so there's not really anything he can do to actually fight him, even if they were to team up against him. Punches out most of Oliver's teeth, don't worry, they will grow back, then proceeds to slowly rip his body apart, talking him through it in excruciating detail because he really is enjoying himself in the worst possible way. When he sees Oliver under threat about to die, Mark starts to lose it a little bit more, but hasn't quite hit that unhinged level that he gets to later in the episode when he thinks that Adam Eve has been killed. But at least at this point, he's slowly starting to let go of the limitations that he's placed on himself, which basically is what Conquest wanted. Like, give me 100%, give me what you truly are capable of. Cecil grabs Oliver, takes him to recover. He'll be fine eventually, which we see later in the episode. His body even regenerates a little bit faster than Mark's just because of the way his alien half works. They age so much more quickly, like they mature so much more quickly, so he regenerates more quickly than Mark would regenerate. But all Viltrumites, even half-breeds, do have a healing factor of some sort. This next part of the fight where he literally grabs Mark's head though and pushes him through the crowd, killing all those people, is a much more gruesome version of what Omni-Man did in Season 1 with the train. If you're talking about most unfortunate deaths in the episode, there were so many people that got killed through collateral damage. The dog was probably the worst, like you had to have him kill the dog. That is cold. On the grand list of unforgivable things that villains do in movies and TV shows, killing dogs is probably close to, if not at the top of that list. That whole twist set off a whole franchise of John Wick films. Eve shows up to help, and even though she has a ton of tricks up her sleeve, their fight goes on like a little bit longer than it did in the comic book version. This is where they start adding some stuff that wasn't in the original comics. This is mostly to show you how much more she's learned how to optimize her powers. They give her much more of a fight than she had against Conquest in the comics. She's gained a much finer understanding of how her powers work, which makes her way more powerful. Like, the more she understands how things work, the more powerful she can be. But her first part of the fight here is meant to be a parallel for Mark's fight against Conquest. Both of them, he and Eve, are holding back for different reasons. She's holding back because metaphorically, she has one hand tied behind her back. She can't alter biological matter, like she can't alter sentient matter. All because of limitations placed on her when she was created. The doctor who created her placed a mental block that prevents her from altering sentient matter. We briefly saw a version of that during the Adam Eve special episode, the big prequel. I did a whole video for it, so I'll link it below in the description. It was a great episode. They're going to be doing those prequel episodes for other characters eventually too. But eventually she tires out and Conquest literally runs her through with his hand, like literally kills her, and she's slowly in the process of dying as Mark rushes to her, causing him to absolutely lose it. This is where he really becomes unhinged. But one of the big twists behind her powers is that she's briefly able to overcome those mental blocks, the limitations, during times of extreme trauma, and dying is one of those extreme traumatic moments, so briefly she gains access to 100% of her powers, uses them to completely reform her body, fresh as new, no scratches on it, and absolutely one-shots Conquest while she's barely conscious. That's how powerful she is. Soloing the raid boss while you're nearly unconscious.
Almost dying was stressful enough to allow me to rebuild my entire body.
But the other thing they reveal during this is that Adam Eve is functionally immortal, so when she gets close to dying, anytime she gets close to dying, she can overcome her limitations, the mental blocks, reform her body, making her functionally immortal. She can just keep doing this anytime she almost dies. There's a lot of other exposition moments during this fight too, where they give you a whole bunch of details and allude to other storylines that they'll pick up in future seasons. When Conquest says he was ordered by Thragg to take control of Earth by any means necessary, there's a reason why Earth is so important to the Viltrumites beyond any other planet in the universe. Like, they literally have the entire universe they could conquer. Why is Earth so important? Well, there's a big reason for that. And a lot of it ties back to the Scourge virus arc in Omni-Man side of the storyline, which we'll eventually pick up with in Season 4. Once I start doing more actual Season 4 videos, I'll talk a little bit more about that arc. But the whole idea is that this isn't happening just because Thragg is pissed at Invincible for rebelling against them. Earth was always of supreme importance to the Viltrumites. It's the whole reason why Omni-Man was originally sent to Earth as opposed to any other planet. Probably one of the best moments during their fight in the original comics too is here when Mark starts talking about the future storyline, like when he went to the future and saw what happened. All this dialogue is right out of that comic book version of the fight, like ripped right off of the page. You don't live to see tomorrow. So basically telling him you don't matter. The rest of the fight also goes down the same way it did in the comics too, with them destroying his hand and Conquest's metal hand with the impact of their punch. It's so hard. And then Conquest breaking both of his hands, so he has to finish the fight using his head, like just pounding him with his head. Now, it's not quite as gruesome as it was in the comics. Like, he's just biting, ripping parts of him off with his teeth, but you can kind of see what's going on here. They give you vibes of that during this. Basically, Mark completely losing it because he still thinks that Adam Eve is dead. Him going completely crazy is also meant to be a parallel, a callback to the end of Season 2 with the Angstrom-Levy fight, because it ended the same way, like he was ended covered in their blood, but that time he was horrified by his actions, as opposed to this time when he's finally come around and realized, no, sometimes I do actually have to kill. Like I said though, Adam Eve eventually comes back to consciousness because of her powers, then fries Conquest. Invincible basically rips the rest of his limbs off, and that's the end of him. Like, he's unconscious, but he's not dead, even though Cecil lies to him later saying that he is dead. Remember, Viltrumites, very, very hard to kill. One of my other favorite moments during this fight too was when Conquest gets brutally honest with Mark. Like I said earlier, it's not something from the original comic book fight, but him basically admitting to him that the other Viltrumites are afraid of him, and it's made him super lonely. Like, I'm just so lonely for company because nobody wants to have anything to do with me. They think I'm so crazy. The monsters, Viltrumites are monsters, the monsters think that I'm a monster. Absolutely amazing performance from Jeffrey Dean Morgan. So even though there was a lot of criticism about his performance in episode 7, I feel like he did way better with his performance in this episode. So sad that he doesn't even get a regular name like Nolan. He's only named for his purpose. But the whole reason why he's telling him all these things, why he's being so honest with him, is because he's going to kill him right after this, and he won't be able to reveal the truth to anyone else, so nobody will find out what Conquest is really feeling. Or at least that's what Conquest thought was going to happen. Then they basically slow all this craziness down to a halt with that nice reunion that he gets with Adam Eve, like, wait, we're still alive, what's going on here? And then just promptly passes right out.
Are you good?
Cecil shows up with all the most powerful available heroes on the planet. The Guardians, a bunch of other heroes like Tech Jacket is here with them. He's super powerful. Capes Inc. heroes, Brit, takes them and Conquest's body back to the GDA. After he comes back to consciousness, Eve explains how her powers work, and a lot of what she's saying to him about the mental blocks, the scientist, the creator, is stuff that they covered in that Adam Eve prequel episode. Basically, when she has access to 100% of her powers, she becomes one of the most powerful people in the universe next to the Viltrumites, basically like a living god. We get a bit of a montage of a couple different characters. This is a lot like the end of previous seasons where they give you like a teaser for a bunch of different storylines that they'll pick up with in the next season. So all these moments are meant to be stuff that they'll follow up with in season 4. D.A. Sinclair has a bit of a funny moment with the Rihanna marks, joking about not having movie night because they need to finish all of them by season 4. The other Viltrumites that Cecil is worried about specifically are Anissa, Kregg, Thragg, and basically their entire military eventually, but this is all stuff that will cross over into like many future seasons. When Cecil shows Mark Conquest's body and says that he's going to burn it, obviously it's a fake body, it's not Conquest's real body. He's alive, Cecil keeping him in that massive block of reinforced metal, basically like a giant building that's a giant bomb designed to blow up if anything goes wrong. Also that he can question him as soon as his healing factor repairs his head enough for him to become conscious again, so he can learn everything there is to know about the Viltrumite Empire. Everything here from Rex's funeral is right out of the comics, as is most of the dialogue and Adam Eve's reaction to all this, and what happens afterwards. As is the idea that Robot changes his name from Rudy to Rex, so there are a lot of questions about this in Season 2 because we saw the older version of the Guardians from the alternate future. You have to remember that his body is a clone of Rex's just in child form, so eventually he'll just age up and look like Rex. That's who we were seeing at the end of Season 2. We were seeing Robot, but he was in the now adult version of Rex's clone body. And if you think that's a weird twist in the comics, that's literally the way it happens in the comics, like Robot literally just changes his name from Rudy to Rex. When they go home and start getting it on, play the music, the reason why their clothes start turning into that weird pile of goo is because Adam Eve's powers are starting to go on the fritz a little bit, acting unpredictably. That's a little bit of a teaser for a much bigger twist, maybe in Season 4, that we'll see. We'll see how they adapt that part of the storyline. Just a little tease for things to come, like more WTF moments. Then they have a quicker montage of the aftermath set to 9 Inch Nails. Nice song choice, love 9 Inch Nails. We see the Sequids in the sewers have survived, and they're slowly planning to attack again in Season 4. Aliens find Battle Beast amidst the frozen pieces of the Viltrumite's body that he was in the middle of destroying earlier this season. He's basically just gone into a form of cryo and comes out, so he's totally fine. For all you fans of Battle Beast, there'll be plenty more of him in future seasons, and there is a new Battle Beast comic book that they just started releasing right now that you can read, like a completely new storyline. One of the tragic connections between Battle Beast and Conquest is that their storylines play out similarly, like their character arcs are similar, where Conquest becomes crazier and crazier the more planets he conquers and more dissociated, more feared by his original race of Viltrumites. The same thing basically happened to Battle Beast, where his people loved him, he became so powerful, but eventually became obsessed with becoming stronger and fighting stronger and stronger opponents, and that's all he thinks about now, is just finding the next strongest opponent to fight. Then we get Mark's speech with Oliver, where he basically explains that he was wrong earlier this season about his stance on not killing, and now he's ready to kill the other Viltrumites when they show up. He's basically okay with doing whatever he needs to do to protect Earth, even if it does mean getting his hands dirty, so to speak. It's basically a callback to what Cecil said earlier this season when he said, we don't get to be both the good guys and the guys who save the world. You have to pick one or the other. So Mark is saying he's okay not being a good guy if it does mean saving the world. Then they end on that post-credit scene of Damien Darkblood coming back after Cecil banished him back to hell.
Have means to restore you to Infernal Throne.
This was not in the original comics, so a lot of people are like, what is going on here? Which character is he referencing? What is this meant to set up? This actually might be connected to Dinosaurus in the comics because the title of episode 8 was from that Dinosaurus event in the comics, and that happened long after his fight with Conquest happened. Like, this is much later, so the whole Dinosaurus event might wind up happening at the beginning of Season 4. But the person he's talking about summoning to hell to put his master here back on his infernal throne in hell, basically win back the throne of hell, Game of Thrones style, Game of Thrones, but put it in hell, might wind up being Dinosaurus because he said blackened heart, so that doesn't sound like Mark does not have a blackened heart. Dinosaurus is a regular human scientist that just has a dinosaur form that is eventually driven crazy. But everyone post your theories about that in the comments below, like who is Damien Darkblood talking about in that post-credits scene? Who has the blackened heart? Also a reminder that Clancy Brown is voicing his character. He also voiced Cahor that they keep bringing back each season for those gags we saw earlier this season too. Overall, it was a great finale. Love the way they did the Conquest fight adapted from the comics. Very accurate to the comics. Some of the stuff that they added too was actually really good too, like especially Conquest admitting his dark truth to Mark. Usually Robert Kirkman is pretty good about teasing what's happening in the following season, but I feel like there's enough stuff that goes on in the finale here, teasing future story arcs, to actually know what's going on, and all the comics are out there so you can read ahead if you want, and they're being relatively accurate to the progression in the comics. Now we all gotta start fan casting Thragg, so let me know in the comments who you want to play that character. I've seen a couple real big actors mentioned on my past couple videos. Whatever they wind up talking about releasing, of course I will do videos about it, so Season 4 videos sometime soon. We're supposed to get Season 4 next year. They did say that they would be releasing seasons once per year, but not exactly when during the year, so it might be like the end of the summer or like the end of the year next year before we get Season 4. That is like the monkey's paw situation here, where like we're going to give you seasons every single year. You don't have to wait multiple years, but it means we're going to have to pull way back on the animation quality. But now that we're heading into Season 4, one of the big things that we'll be talking about will probably be them eventually teasing the Thragg character, basically the most powerful Viltrumite who exists in the universe right now in present day. Seriously, there are so many big arcs that are coming up. But if there are any other Easter eggs or references in the episode that you spotted that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. Really big reminder, we're also in the middle of Daredevil Born Again episodes. My episode 4 trailer video will post next. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that. Click here for that video. I'll update the link as soon as I post that. And click here for all my Invincible episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.